Applying labels to objects in XSI, textures applied to the surface in such a way that they don't cover the entire surface of the object. This is something which you would expect to be fairly simple and fairly straightforward, and then you try it and it turns out to be not quite as straightforward as you expected. I'm just going to run through the motions of this so that you can see why it's not as straightforward as you think. I've got an object here, it's a NURB surface object. I'm going to put a material on it, a Phong shader, nice white one, and I'm going to get a texture projection for it. This will be a UV texture projection. I'll select the texture support and scale it and position it to where we want to put our label. On the front of our tin can, a bit of scaling there. There we go. And just centre it up nicely. Okay, now in the render tree we've got our material here and the Phong shader that we've just applied to it, and very straightforward texturing. Get an image texture and plug it directly into the diffuse component of our Phong shader. Change the default no icon to a nice low texture and make sure that our texture projection is the one that we've just placed on it. Okay, so we've built our texture. Let's have a look in the preview and see what it does. And there you go, nice beer label right in the centre, filling the area of the texture projection there. But outside of that area it's black, which is not what we want. It's fairly reasonable that it should be black because there's no the image finishes there. There's no information in there to give it any kind of colour whatsoever. So how do we deal with that? Well, the trick to this is to make a matte, which we use to drive a Mix 2 Colours node. And there are a number of ways of deriving that matte. One way is to use images or the alpha channel from the texture image that we've got. There's also a nice little tricksy method that we can use which involves maths nodes. We'll look at that in a little while, but first of all we're going to take a look at the matte method. For the matte, first time round I'm going to get an image, and this is an image that again I've prepared earlier. This pure white. This image happens to be the same size and proportions pixel wise as the texture that we've applied here. Excuse me. In fact, it doesn't have to be, because if it's smaller or larger, well, it will just be expanded or contracted to fit within the area of this, but it was just convenient to make it that size, so it doesn't matter. And let's go to Mix 2 Colours node here, and what we're going to do is we're going to use this matte image here to drive the weight of the Mix 2 Colours node and use that to composite two shaders together. Plug the image output into the weight, and just for now, so that we can see what it's doing, I'm going to plug that Mix 2 Colours into the surface there. There we go. And put the correct texture projection in there. So if you remember, the default colours in the Mix 2 Colours nodes are blue in the colour area and the base colour is green. And that's giving us the matte that we need to composite our shaders together. So now it's simply a case of taking the textured Phong node and plugging it into colour 1, and there you go, there's our label in the centre. And now we get a second Phong node and plug that into the base colour, and there we have our control around the area that's outside the label. Simple as that. And if we change the colours in there, then it changes the colours on the outside of the can, which is perfect. It's going to tidy this tree up a little bit. The only reason I'm taking these nodes, these inputs out of these nodes here, is for clarity. Put that into the material there. Put that out of the way there. So very simply, a matte image that drives the weight of the Mix 2 Colors node. The texture input goes into color 1 and a second Phong node goes into the base color. This gives us a further degree of flexibility. We can use this matte to cut areas out of the texture if we want to. Let's put a slightly different texture in there. This is another, oops, sorry. This is one that's been painted to coincide with the to mask out the oval area of the label that we've already got on there, and there we've cut the oval out effectively. That's a really nice thing to be able to do. Let's put the square one back there just for now. There. We can simplify this a little bit further by using the alpha channel in the image that we're using for our texture, if we have one there, and this one does happen to have one there. Let's have a look at it in the alpha there. That's the oval that corresponds to the oval in the fill there. So it's there, all we need to do is just get to it, and that's very simple using a color channel picker. The color channel picker has a color input and a channel parameter here which allows us to pick between red, green, blue and alpha, and we can also average out RGB so that the output can be an average of those channels there, or we can take minimum and maximum of those as well. That's quite a useful little node, that. Take the output of our image and plug that into the input of the channel picker, and then the output of that, which you'll notice is a scalar node. This is because it's only taken the one channel from the 3 channels of the color input, so it would only be a color node. That's not a problem, because when we plug it into the weight there, it puts a scalar to color converter in there for us, and that's okay, and there we go. And again, that's just cut out the label there for us, and we can get rid of all of the rubbish that's left over there. Let's just tidy that up so that you can see that tree. And to summarize, we have an image texture which is driving the diffuse component of a Phong shader. We have a pick channel which is extracting the alpha from our image, going through a type converter into the weight, and then we have another Phong node into the base color there. And now that we've got one texture onto the surface of an object, it's only going to be a matter of time before we decide we need more than one label on, and that's what we're going to have a look at next. This is the same object as we had before. I've already put a Phong shader onto it, and I've put 3 texture projections that you can see outlined in green on there. Open up the render tree. We're going to take a look at just putting 2 on, and when I do that, first of all we get a single texture image there and plug it, as we've done before, into the diffuse component. Get ourselves a texture there, and give it the first texture projection as its support. Okay, and let's have a look and see what we get. Pretty much as we'd expect, our texture goes into the area of the first texture projection and the rest is black. If we change texture projections, then the position of the image changes accordingly. So the trick here is to figure out a way to combine each of those, the images in each of those texture projections into one, so that we can plug them into the diffuse component there of the Phong shader. And the node that we use to do that is a math node, and it's the color basic math node. If we open it up, you'll see that it has 2 inputs and an operation parameter. In the property page, you'll see that the operation parameter there has a number of options in the drop down there. The operation parameter determines how these 2 input colors are combined before they go onto the output of the node. Add together, subtract one from the other, multiply, etc., etc. add is the one that we're going to use here. And what we do is we plug the texture image that we've already got into input 1, and then we get a second image and plug that into input 2. I'm going to use the same texture for all of these just for the moment, because anything is better than the no icon image. Once we've got those two together there like that, we simply plug the Color Math Basic node into the diffuse input, as we've suggested, and you can see there that the top texture projection area and the bottom texture projection area images have combined into one, which is exactly what we want. So once we've gotten that far, we're going to use pretty much the same technique as we used to composite shaders together with one texture label, so that we can get rid of this black around here. And that is to bring down the Mix 2 Colors node there and plug our Color Math Basic into Color 1. Plug the Fong into Color 1 that's coming from the Color Math Basic, and get another Fong and plug that into the base color. Now we need to pull out our alpha channels for the weight so that we can composite these two shaders together. And as luck would have it, the Color Math Basic node does that for us. If there's an alpha channel on these two image nodes there, then it will combine them together, but only if the Apply to Alpha toggle box is toggled on there, otherwise it just puts blank in there. And we can then put it through the Color Channel Picker, again exactly as we did with the single texture, and that can go into the weight there. And then all we need to do is plug the Mix 2 Colors node directly into the surface. There. And there we go. If you remember, the matte channel that we have for that particular image is oval. So we've successfully combined two textures together. Just to recap, and just tidy this tree up just a little bit. Yeah, just to recap, we've taken two images, each with its own texture projection, one at the top and one at the bottom. We've used the Color Math Basic node to add those two together. We then pass that through a pick channel node to get the alpha out and into a scalar to color converter to use as the weight input for our Mix 2 Colors node. So that's the matte that's being used to composite these two shaders together. And then the fill output of the Color Math Basic shader goes into a Fong as a texture, goes into the diffuse component and straight into Color 1, and then another Fong into base Color 2. And as we did before, changing colours there changes the colour of the areas outside the label. So that's two textures. So how do we deal with three then? Well, three is just a question of cascading Color Math Basic nodes. So we'll need another image texture node there, our third one, and again use the same input for that, there, and we'll get another Color Math Basic node there. Turn on the Apply to Alpha because we will need that. And now one of these inputs will be from the image, and the other input will come from our previous Color Math node. And the output of the new Color Math Basic node goes into the diffuse of our Fong shader there, and the input of the pick channel node there. That looks a little bit strange up there because we're adding together two images in exactly the same place. We haven't yet set the appropriate texture projection in here. We'll set that to, the second one. And there we have three labels. And so you go ad infinitum. Tidy that up again just to make it clearer. So we're cascading Color Math Basic nodes. If we wanted to add another one, then we'd get another texture image in another Color Math Basic node and cascade them through, and the output of the new Color Math Basic node would go into our Phong and our pick channel. So that's applying many texture labels to the surface of an object.